Hey, what's up guys? Tyler here with Secureteam. Before we start off today, I'd just like to give my condolences to the family of Carrie Fisher, best known for her role as Princess Leia in the Star Wars films. She passed away. She was only 60 years old, which is just mind-blowing to me. I mean, it's just too young, too young. And it should really make you take stock of how you're living, your health and lifestyle choices, and to really make every day count. Don't let time pass by holding grudges and everything else. You have to live every day like it's your last. So I wanted to bring to your attention something that, again, few people really know about. Well, at least it's seldom spoken about. And we've actually never posted a video about this. So the topic of today's video is the mysterious deaths, or, well, as they're called, suicides, of over 20 researchers and scientists who during the 80s and 90s worked in some form or capacity on the Star Wars program, all of which met with very mysterious deaths, most of them being ruled suicides. And you hear a number like that, 20 plus people. Now some people say it was 22, others say it was 25, but this really did happen. It was reported on throughout the 80s and 90s by various news outlets, people who were trying to get to the bottom of it, and to this day, talks of a conspiracy are still hotly debated. So, to preface, I guess we should start off with the Star Wars project in general. What was the Star Wars project? Well, it was most commonly known as Star Wars, but it was actually called the Strategic Defense Initiative, or SDI. And it was a program first initiated on March 23, 1983, under President Ronald Reagan. The official public story and intent of this program was to develop a sophisticated anti-ballistic missile system in order to prevent missile attacks from other countries, specifically the Soviet Union. It was supposed to be this defense system that protected America specifically. But many people believe that this was just a cover, or at least this was only a part of the program. When many people think of Star Wars, they think of space. They think of wars going on in space, just like the film. And there are many out there who believe that this missile defense system was actually created wholly, or at least in part, as a deterrent to some kind of off-world threat from space. Now, this may have been easily brushed off by skeptics who would say, well, there's no proof of this, it's just blind theories and conspiracy gossip. If it weren't for Ronald Reagan's own obsession with aliens and UFOs, and the at least 5 separate occasions when Ronald Reagan actually brought up the topic of aliens. In fact, on September 28, 1981, President Reagan received a letter from a major retired Coleman von Kavitsky. Von Kavitsky was the director of the International UFO Galactic Spacecraft Research and Analytic Network. This group held that UFOs represented an intergalactic task force that would destroy Earth unless its world leaders banded together to end their hostile actions against UFOs. Von Kavitsky began his career by working for the United Nations Staff Audiovisual Department, and is noted to have briefed or at least contacted President Reagan as well as his administration talking about this UFO threat, and that at the very least we needed to get our defense systems in order. At one point, the chief military advisor of the White House and National Security Council, Major General Robert Schweitzer, sent a reply back to von Kavitsky, citing, and I quote, "The President is well aware of the threat you document so clearly and is doing all in his power to restore the national defense margin of safety as quickly and prudently as possible." And who can forget the famous speech given by President Reagan before the United Nations in 1987, where he spoke longingly for world unity that would happen if an alien invasion were to take place on our planet.
Perhaps we need some outside universal threat. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us? What could be more alien to the universal aspirations of our peoples than war and the threat of war?
Many believe that this was a subtle hint by the president. That, in conjunction with all of the other times he had mentioned UFOs or had correspondence with UFO researchers, all of which has given us this understanding that President Reagan definitely knew about this so-called threat, and that he was going to do something about it, and hence we arrive back at the Star Wars program. And the upwards of 25 suicides, quote-unquote suicides, by the top scientists who were working on the projects, not to mention an actual alien sighting by a security guard that worked there and then vanished after the incident. Now, I'm not going to go through all 25 of these. I'm just going to read through a couple here, and you guys tell me if something smells fishy here. One of these men was a 50-year-old named Alistair Beckham, who was a successful British aerospace projects engineer. His specialty was designing computer software for sophisticated naval defense systems. Like hundreds of other British scientists, he was working on a pilot program for America's Strategic Defense Initiative, otherwise known as Star Wars. And like at least 21 of his colleagues, he died a bizarre, violent death. It was a sunny Sunday afternoon in August of 1988. After driving his wife to work, Beckham walked through his garden to a musty backyard tool shed and sat down on a box next to the door. He wrapped bare wires around his chest, attached the cords to an electrical outlet, and put a handkerchief in his mouth. He then flipped the switch. With his death, Beckham's name was added to a growing list of British scientists who died or disappeared under mysterious circumstances since 1982. Each of them was a skilled expert in computers, and each was working on a highly classified project for the Star Wars program. None of them, mind you, had any apparent motive for killing themselves, including this man here. In October of 1986, a man by the name of Arshad Sharif, who worked on satellite methods of detecting submarines, died from tying one end of a ligature around his neck and the other end around a tree. He then got in his car and sped off with the gas pedal jammed down. The coroner called it a suicide. A 1987 death included Richard Pugh, who was an MOD computer consultant and a digital communications expert. He was found dead in his apartment with a bag over his head, his feet were bound, and his body was tied in a rope that wrapped around his neck 4 times. The coroner called it an accident. Another scientist by the name of Mark Weisner died in an extremely similar manner about 3 months later. In 1986, Vilmel Dajbai was 1 week away from leaving the project. He had a new job lined up in London, and his friends and family claim he was excited for it. He then allegedly committed suicide by jumping off a suspension bridge to his death. The original police report noted a needle-sized puncture on his left thigh. This mark was later written off as, quote, incidental to his impact. The coroner's case to this is still open. In 1985, Jonathan Walsh, who had also been a digital communications expert, died from falling out of his hotel room window. Before he died, he expressed a fear for his life. That coroner's report is still open. In 1987, Shawnee Warren wasn't a scientist, but he was a personal assistant in a company that was acquired by GE Marconi just 4 short weeks after her passing. She was found drowned in 18 inches of water, with a noose around her neck, a gag in her mouth, bound feet, and her hands tied around her back. The coroner's verdict is still open, but some have stated that it was a suicide. That suicide would have included her binding herself and then stumbling with bound feet and stiletto heels a short ways to her liquid death. So these are only a handful of the scientists who work for GEC Marconi as well as the Star Wars project. And there have been countless articles in the 80s and 90s from reputable papers talking about this. You're seeing just some of those newspapers here. There's even a book about this, published in 1990, titled Open Verdict, an account of 25 mysterious deaths in the defense industry. There was even a report of a UFO sighting that occurred at one of the buildings for the project. A security guard apparently was doing his rounds late at night, armed and with his German Shepherd dog, who came upon a strange blue light within the top secret area. Upon investigating this office, he unlocked the door and walked inside the room to find a gray-colored alien, wearing headgear out of which a blue light emanated. Allegedly, this being was rifling through all of the top-secret documents. The shock was too much apparently for the security guard, after which it is said that he was taken to a special MOD psychiatric hospital and never seen again. Now, whether this alleged UFO and alien sighting actually happened or not, I can't be sure. But what we do know is that all of these scientists and researchers were found dead. Most of them were deemed suicides, and all of them were under suspicious circumstances. Nobody believes, including their own families, that they killed themselves. And this is just a further example of the lengths that the government will go to silence people. And well, you guys know all about this. It's been documented countless times. How many times have we heard of these mysterious car crashes, these mysterious suicides, in which they find a man with 2 bullet holes to the back of his own head and a noose wrapped around his neck? Yeah, that's a suicide. I've known plenty of people that have been able to shoot themselves in the back of the head, stop and reload, and then shoot themselves again. Totally sounds legit. And you know what? Lately, we've also been talking about the mysterious deaths of UFO researchers. It seems like we are dropping like flies. And this stuff is truly scary to think about, because you never know when something can happen, and it just makes you wonder how many other UFO researchers or people who were talking about things that the government didn't want have passed away and that were ruled, quote, suicides that we just don't know about. How many of these people have died of quote-unquote natural causes that just hasn't been in the media and that we would have no idea happened? It really does make you think. So, this is a very mysterious story. Many people don't know about it, so I definitely wanted to post this. Let me know what you guys think. Research up on it yourself. There's plenty of info out there. And be sure to stick around because I've got a lot more coming. R.I.P. Princess Leia, and I'll see you guys here in just a bit.